The next speaker, and sharing with deputies Michael Fitzmaurice, Richard Boyd Barrett, Seamus Healy. That's 7.5 minutes each, is that right?
Thank you, Last Corda.
Thank you.
This finance bill tells a tale of two different budgets. One budget that is for working class people, for the most vulnerable, for unemployed people, which is a budget which in effect continues austerity for them. And the other budget is a recovery budget. It's a recovery budget for the rich, recovery budget for the high earners, recovery budget for developers, a recovery budget for the corporations. The Sunday Business Post on the Sunday before the budget announced on the front page the end of austerity, gains for top earners, builders and farmers. And they're correct. The end of austerity for them, no problem with that. They left out the private landlords who also will benefit. But the reality is that the budget, it goes further with the logic of austerity for ordinary people for the 99% and recovery for the 1%. To start with the 99%, to start with the continuation of austerity, you have a cut in the Department of Social Protection of €179 million, the biggest cut of any department within this budget. You have a continuation of the incredibly cruel cut to the respite care grant, which had cut by 20%, which had a huge impact on people with disabilities, their families, those who depended on this money to pay bills and to cover the extra costs due to having a disability. I would ask the Minister, even at this stage, that we have an amendment and that we reverse that cut at a time that recovery has supposedly arrived. For those who are unemployed, for example, an unemployed single person get a benefit of 90 cents per week in this budget, while a single person earning €75,000 a year gets a benefit of €14.30 per week in this budget. And it comes to the point that for those on low incomes, the scraps given in this budget are going to be more than wiped away by the water charges. And the water charge is central to the continuation of this austerity agenda, to the fact that people simply cannot afford to pay. So your 90 cents a week will be completely wiped away when it comes to a water charge that may start at the €200 that Minister Burton promised us yesterday, but will quickly rise once the caps are lifted. And just a point on the water charges, because the propaganda of the government has undergone a significant shift. So originally this was all about conservation, about making us pay our way and so we can have investment in infrastructure. And the main argument of the government right now is no, actually this was all a trick. The whole time it was a trick on the European Commission, it was a trick on the Troika, a way of fiddling money, putting it off balance sheet, and then somehow magically money comes from nowhere because it's off balance sheet and it saves us all money. And if we'd only go along with that trick, it'll cost us very, very little and it'll save us money in the long run. That's just the latest propaganda by the government. The reality is, whether the money is off balance sheet or on balance sheet, it's money that has to be found, and the question is who pays that money. But also, let's look. There's a lot of talk now about the fact that when it's off balance sheet and you have 51%, etc., that you meet the market conditions test. Well, as the Minister read the market conditions test, a condition of the market conditions test is that the seller acts to maximise their profit. And so the government accuses us of scaremongering about privatisation, about scaremongering, about costs going up. But the whole basis of the government's current argument for water charges is built on the foundation of a test that says the sellers must act to maximise their profit. And so I would consider that means that Irish Water has to argue with CER to eliminate the allowances, to argue over time that the price, which is already double what corporations pay, should go up over time. And obviously, in time, that points to privatisation if you manage to commodify our water supply. Looking at the other side of the budget, because there is definitely a recovery, so we have the fact that high earners on €70,000 a year or more will benefit 4 times those on the minimum wage. We have the fact that specifically in the budget is a specific measure targeted at a very particular class of people, which is the likes of CEOs earning over €500,000, with the elimination of the limit, the cap on the SART, the Special Assignee Relief Programme. Incredible that the government would take its time to go and allocate a special tax relief for those who are earning €500,000 or more. This is a developer's budget. The elimination of the windfall tax is incredible. Obviously, it's dressed up in the idea that that's how somehow we're going to have more homes built. That's not going to create any more homes being built, but what it is going to do is give more profits to the developers. There is not sufficient house building taking place, not because of the existence of the tax, but because the absence of investment by the government, by the state, in house building, which is at an all-time historic low. And so we're going back to allowing these people to speculate on land, make huge profits, and it's ordinary people who pay the price, those who have to find somewhere to live. We have a private landlord's budget, whereby the extension of the home renovation incentive to rental properties. So apparently, the explosion of rental costs, which ordinary people are paying the price for, hasn't been enough to allow landlords to shell out on some new furniture, and so we have to incentivise them with a tax break to do it. Minister Noonan, in his budget speech, expressed expectation that the tax savings will be reflected in rent levels. That's a joke. If you lived in the real world, if you rented, if you interacted with landlords, you know that landlords will simply take whatever they can and raise rents to whatever possible level that they're able to do it to. Finally, we have a corporations budget. We have 95 million euros of extra corporate tax breaks contained in this budget before we even deal with the reality of the patent box. Earlier on, Minister Noonan, in answering Deputy Boyd Barrett, stated on corporation tax that the Irish government play fair but play to win. And that encapsulates, in a very honest way, the strategy of this government and previous governments, which is the notion of tax competition. Right? Which is the notion that we're all engaged right around the world in a race to the bottom to provide the environment that is best for corporations, with the lowest corporation tax rates, with the most flexible labour, with the most exploited labour, with the lowest wage rates. That's the game that the Minister and the government are involved in. And it's a game whereby there are only one winners. The winners are the corporations, who have benefited. In the OECD, the average corporation tax rate in 1981 was 49.1%. In 2012, it's 32.4%. Has investment gone up? No, investment has declined. Has the rates of GDP growth gone up? No, the rates of GDP growth have declined. The same in Ireland. We've been incentivising corporations to invest for years, but particularly since the 12.5% rate, particularly since the double Irish. But the result has been a collapse since 2007 in private sector investment, rather than rises in private sector investment. And the winners have been the corporations who have managed to have massive tax avoidance on a global scale, and the patent box is just going to allow them to continue to do so after 2020.
Now call Deputy Michael